Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warcheck if you want to call me by my in-game name. In this episode, we're going to be going over my top 4 cards that I'm excited that are leaving with Karazhan, the adventure mode, and my top 4 cards that I'm kind of sad that are leaving with Karazhan. The reason I picked 4 instead of 5 is because it's an adventure mode and it had significantly less cards than a normal expansion, so I didn't think it was fair to include the same amount of cards if I'm like having to force myself to like pick those cards. So I figured, hey, these are the top 4 that stood out from each side. I might as well pick them. And then towards the end, after we cover the 4, I'm going to just go over any other cards that are significant and what decks they belong to. So the first card that I'm happy that is rotating, and I'm sure everybody else is very, very happy as well, and that's Barnes. This guy, it's just so high rolly. I mean, the card is cool when they made it and it fit into like Control Paladin, and you know, you rip a Karen or a Tyrion and it's kind of cool, right? But then later on it found its way into the Big Priest or Death Rattle Priest, not even Death Rattle Priest, Resurrect Priest or Big Priest. And you basically Barnes, and then you can pull like a Rage, and Rage pulls then another giant minion, then you Eternal Servitude the Rage to bring back another minion. So the ability to basically blow out your opponent by just simply drawing this cards on turn 3 if you have coin, or just naturally on 4 playing him, it's not fun or interactive for the opposing player. Sure, it's fun for the player who rips the Barnes and thinks they're very skilled, skilled player for doing so, but it's not actually a very fun experience, and I think it kind of ruins what the deck was actually meant to do, because without Barnes, the deck is still powerful and you pay the price for having a deck the way you do, but basically Barnes gives you that 20% of the time, hey, I'm just going to win the game regardless of whatever you drew. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to kill you with giant minions on turn 4 and 5, and you're dead. It also found its way recently into Hunter, and they actually only run Barnes and Rage just for the 50% chance you get Barnes before the Rage, just to make a 10-10 on turn 4 or 6 or whatever you happen to draw him. So I mean, this guy is substantially good in the decks he belongs into and gives you a huge win percentage increase if you draw him prior, you know, to the actually drawing the other minions you're hoping not to get prior to Barnes. So happy to see Barnes go. It's probably one of my least favorite cards to have come from Karazhan, and probably just in the game in general. Our next card is gonna be Hat-Trick. The reason I don't like this card, and I'm kind of excited to see it leave, is the fact that the Panther that it gives your opponent is stealth, which means you can't really, if you're at a low life total and you play a spell, which a lot of decks have a lot of spells, the Panther that they bring out, if you're running more of a mid-range or basically an aggressive base deck, you don't most of the time have a lot of taunts, and you don't have a lot of spells to be able to deal with invisible minions like Hellfire, Defile, Twisting Nether, you know, Lightning Storm, Brawl, stuff like that. So this basically makes it so your opponent generated a card that you can't interact with, and I know that's like, Rob, it's a cool card, just accept the fact, but I don't like secrets that not only do you not know what the secret is and you have to play around it accordingly. I understand it's a secret and that's, you know, part of the game, but not knowing which secret they play, and then being unable to target or, you know, interrupt what the secret did is kind of, I didn't like it. It's a cool card, you know, sure, people used it and it's very powerful, and the reason it is very powerful is because the Panther does have stealth, and plus you basically got a 2-mana 4/2 with stealth, which is absolutely fucking crazy in stats and ability, plus it's a beast, you have beast synergy there. So I by no means feel sorry for this leaving. I mean, it's just a really good secret because you're unable to target that Panther. So I'm actually really excited to not have to deal with Hat-Trick anymore. The next card I'm going to talk about is Firelands Portal. This card, depending on what minion it brings out, make or breaks this card. You know, if you pay 7 mana to deal 5 damage and you generate a 2/2 bomb squad that deals 5 damage to your face, it becomes a really bad card. Or you could spend the same amount of damage, spend the same amount of mana, deal the same amount of damage, and generate an Earth Elemental. That's a pretty good. The variance is a little bit too high there for my taste. I mean, it's just, no. Yeah, that's not cool. I mean, if you're playing in a tournament, you have 2 mages going off. One guy generates a Earth Elemental, and the other guy generates a 2/2 that deals 5 damage to himself. I mean, there was no skill difference in between these two players. It was mere, what was the random creature that gets brought out this time? And I understand that on average it brings out a normal 5-cost minion, but unfortunately if you're playing on ladder, you don't play your opponent 2 out of 3 times or 3 out of 5 times. You play them one game, and in that game, you want it to be as equal as possible. So in order for like cards like this to actually equal out to where you like hit a median, you actually have to play a lot of games. So it feels like, you know, this game sucks, this game was good, this game was normal, and it kind of like evens out in the middle. But the variance shouldn't be that high. I mean, it's just not cool. So I'm happy to see Firelands Portal go, and yeah, I have no regrets for Firelands Portal. And the last one is Babbling Book. This card actually won the last, not this past World Championship, but the prior one, Pavel versus Amnesiac. He actually got the exact card he needed from the Babbling Book to, I believe, win the series after it was tied up. And it's been nicknamed Paveling Book because of that. So, I mean, a 1-mana 1/1 Battlecry, add a random mage spell to your hand. Sure, there's very similar cards like this, like Swashbuckler, but at the same time, you can't play around the card it gives you. It's completely fucking random. It's just, I don't know, man. I wish it was just a 2-mana 1/1 Discover a spell. Then at least the spell they discover, it was out of 3 and it wasn't completely random, and you can kind of guess based on when they played the card and how fast they picked the card what it's going to be. Plus they played a premium for the stats, but basically a 1-mana 1/1 that generates a card. You're not really losing anything out of this guy other than you not knowing what spell you pick, but that kind of, I don't know. You know me, guys, don't like super random abilities. That's why we picked Tome in the last video, and that's why we don't like Firelands Portal. I try to make it as streamlined as possible. I accept that there's randomness in these kinds of games, and random adds funny elements and highlights and stuff like that, but it's like, what point of random is too much and which is not enough, right? And I think there's a little bit too much at the moment for my taste, and hopefully in the next set, we'll definitely see a little bit less. So those are all the cards that I'm excited that are leaving, specifically in this rotation from the Karazhan Adventure Mode. The next couple are actually I'm kind of sad about. One being the, oh boy, let me find it. It's the Maelstrom Portal. For some reason, there we go. It wasn't getting brought up. It's a Maelstrom Portal. The reason I like this card a lot is because Dude Palette, it's just a very good AoE against like everything. Like even in the late game, you feel like, well, 1 damage isn't that much, but you still generate the 1-cost minion. And in Shaman, we've seen how important that 1-cost minion is because it can land next to Flame Tongue Totem, and you can Bloodlust it. It's a very big threat. So not only does it have the ability to do damage, a small amount of damage, it also has the synergy of being able to pick up a minion and then that minion do well with other things, like I said, like Bloodlust or Flamestrong. So it doesn't actually only do AoE like Lightning Storm, and that's why most of the times we see Maelstrom actually picked over Lightning Storm, even though Lightning Storm does more damage, is because you actually get something else if AoE isn't something you need at that game. You know, you use Lightning Storm against a Warlock, it's not really doing much because it's not going to kill it. Neither of these cards are going to kill a Void Daddy either way, but at least one of them you got to generate a minion, and possibly that minion could be a 2/1, you know, a 1/1, a 1/2, sometimes, you know, even higher statted than that. But most of the time, the 1/1 you get does have 1 HP and around 1 to 2 attack. And like I said, it can be synergized. So I'm kind of sad to see Maelstrom Portal leave, and now Shaman literally has no early game AoE besides Lightning Storm, and that card really sucks. It's pay 5 mana to do 2 to 3 damage to everything. 5 mana is a lot to pay to do 2 to 3 damage. It was a guaranteed 3, it would probably be worth it and see a lot more play, but the fact that it does 2 to 3, it's a little bit questionable, and again, the variance there is really high. It's a 33%, I mean, it's a 50% chance to do a third more damage, and that's just insane. The next card I'm kind of sad to go is Nether Space Historian. I know a lot of players who really dislike this card due to the fact that it brings out more operatives, but at the same time, if you think about in value terms, like a Control Priest without all of that extra mojo, like the Spiteful Priest was really dumb, and I didn't like the deck due to the fact that how simplistic it was, and it was basically just play high-statted minions every turn. But back in the day, and currently right now, there's a Control Priest running around that just it runs dragons and it outvalues your opponent without, you know, just perv stoning the shit out of them. So I'm actually kind of sad to leave this go. Dragons have always been a cool kind of factor, and there's a lot of great cool dragons besides Operative, which that card's just broken. I feel like they could reduce the stats and it would still be just insane and everybody would still play it, but there's a lot of cool dragons. You got Ysera, you have Scalebane, you got Deathwings. You've got a lot of cool stuff in there, Bookworms. So I think this card is actually pretty cool. Gave a lot of value to the dragons, and it's one of the few like you know, they add Bone Drake, I believe it's called. That card kind of sucks. It's a 6 mana, 6/5, you know, Death Rattle generated dragon, but, you know, the ability to discover a dragon was so much more powerful because you actually got to pick the dragon out of the 3, which actually made the card really good. Another card I'm sad to see go is the Arcane Giant, and this is because this guy was able to fit into so many different decks. Granted, he doesn't see play a lot right now, due to the fact that he's just, the meta doesn't allow for him. But at one time, he was found in a ton of different decks. I mean, he was found in the Jade Druid, he was found in Yogg Druid, he was found as Token Druid, he was found in Tempo Mage, he was found in Control Mage, he was found in OTK Warrior, he was found in, I know I'm missing like 2 decks here. The OTK Mage, you know, instead of the Sorcerer's Apprentices and Archmage, you could run the Arcane Giants instead. It's found in Miracle Rogue. I mean, the card just has a lot of ability to fit into a bunch of different decks. He's a neutral, he's a giant. Every time they've printed giants, they've been pretty cool. We have Molten Giant, Mountain Giant, Arcane Giant, there's Clockwork Giant. So there's, I mean, it's just cool cards in general. They all have pretty unique abilities, and it's going to be sad to see Arcane Giant float away into the wild space where we can't play with him in standard anymore. Really cool card, and it's a huge tempo play. I know a lot of people hated this guy at first because, you know, somebody tempoing out 2 8/8s that cost less than like 2 mana each is really annoying. But you got to keep in mind, playing 12 spells, that's a lot of spells, man. That's like close to half the deck, and if you draw this guy early on, he really can't do anything at all. So there was actually a pretty heavy price to pay and a burden to, you know, having 2 of these in your deck, and that's kind of why we don't see him as much anymore. But still a card that I'm going to be sad that goes, just because of how cool the card is. The last card we're going to discuss, and another card I'm very sad to see float away in the space of Wild, is going to be Medivh. The reason I like this card is just pure value. I mean, the stats on this guy really suck. And if we compare him to other 8 mana cards like Rag and stuff like that, I mean, Rag is really good, and they instead of doing something immediately, which I like in Hearthstone, you know, Rag, you end the turn, he shoots 8 damage at something. Medivh, you're able to equip the staff, your opponent can counterplay with the staff, your opponent techs in Acidic Swamp Ooze and stuff like that. Harrison Jones, you're able to counterplay with it, but you do get an effect right away, and then after that, you get, you know, 3 charges of value based on the spells you play, which means your deck should have some high cost spells in there, and do you hold on to those spells, wait for addish value, or the great staff value, or do you use the spells earlier and, you know, use your 3 and 4 spells? So there was a lot of intricacies to the play, what spells to play, when to play them, and then, you know, the fact that if your opponent runs removal, they get rewarded. So there was a lot of kind of mechanics going on here behind the scenes of this card, and he was able to fit into, again, a bunch of different decks. He fit into Jade Druid, he fits in Control Mage. A lot of times, some people at the early stages were putting him in Control Lock. You see him and sometimes some priest decks. So there's just a lot of cool stuff that went on with Medivh. And it's going to be sad to see him go just because of, you know me, you know I love value. And this guy was just a super value generator, especially when you could, can't think of the card name, but you're able to generate another one because it generates the lowest cost card in your hand. And because we were playing Control Mage and there's only like 6 minions in the entire deck, we could target this guy almost every time. And it was just multiple Medivhs is the best kind of Medivhs. So moving to, those are all of the cards. The top cards stood out to me of happy they're rotating, not happy they're rotating. Moving to cards that I think that are just important in a nutshell. Enchanted Raven doesn't actually look like it's that big of a deal. It's a 1 mana 2/2 just beast, but it greatly affected the ability for the aggro druids to be able to put a foothold on the board early on. It may not seem like it, but turn 1 Enchanted Raven into turn 2 Mark of Yasharj was very, very good. It basically put a 4/4 on the board on turn 2, and they drew a card, and that allowed them to buff it and just do a whole bunch of crazy shit. So Enchanted Raven, with it leaving, is definitely going to hurt druids in the early game. The next one we're going to talk about, we already talked about the hat trick, is the Kindly Grandmother. Again, a card that we don't see a ton right now, but when we did see this card, it was almost found in every single hunter deck, whether it be aggro, mid-range, or some forms of control. It was just a fantastic card, really annoying for your opponent to deal with. Do they kill this 1/1 and then try to deal with the 3/2 before they Houndmaster, or do you just let this stay a 1/1 on the board in the hopes that they don't Houndmaster it and turn it into a 3/3 with Taunt? So just a very powerful hunter card in the early game, and then pops into another one. So you're basically playing for a 3 mana 4/3, which is just, or 2 mana 4/3, which is just good in general. The next one we're going to lose is Valet. Again, we already talked about the Babbling Book and the Firelands Portal, so we have Valet here. Very, very important card in Tempo Mage. It's basically having an extra, like, Frostbolt inside of a minion if you control a secret. Most of the time you control a secret, because not only are you able to play a secret for free with some other cards like the Cabal Lackey and the Kirin Mage, but also it's just a cheap price of 2 mana. I mean, most of the time, turn 5, they play a secret, they can Valet, or maybe turn, 4, they play the Kirin Tor, and no. On turn 3, they play the Cabal Lackey, the secret, and the Valet. They put power on board, they develop a secret, and they do 3 damage. So there's just a lot of tempo burst that you can do with the Valet. Very powerful card. Tempo Mage is going to hurt a lot when this card rotates out. Moving to the next one, we have nothing really for Paladins that stand out to me. We look at Priest. We see Priest of the Feast. This card, again, was not super popular, but still does see a decent amount of play in Priest, whether it be the Dragon Control, the Combo Dragon, and Highlander when it was a thing. I still, play Highlander occasionally. It's a pretty good deck still. But anyway, being able to heal 3 health every time you cast a spell, plus the stats on it are pretty competitive for the mana cost. I mean, it's just a good card, and definitely is going to hurt the Priest a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a make or break like the Valet for it is for the Mage, but it's still like a good card that's very powerful against aggro and still just has a high health total and is annoying versus any kind of like aggro deck or any sort of like, you played in your Combo Dragon or Combo Dragon deck and it's just like really annoying. You got to kill it. Moving to the next one, we have Swash, basically found in Miracle. And it was found in the Tempo Rogue for a while. Tempo Rogue has definitely died out, but Miracle Rogue is still around in some parts, and it's just a pretty good card. Very similar to Babbling Book. I didn't think it was super up there because Babbling Book is played in Control Mage sometimes, Tempo Mage sometimes, and as well as it's played in the OTK Mage that runs a Sorcerer's Apprentice. So it definitely is going to affect more decks than just the Swash at the moment, but still worthy of mentioning. We already talked about the Maelstrom Portal, looking at Warlocks. Warlocks take a pretty sizable hit in the zoo department. We already discussed in the last episode that they lost the Darkshire Councilman. Now they're losing the Alcazar's Imp, and this guy allows you to, of course, discard. When you discard cards, you redraw them back, and so now when they play Doomguard on 5, they have no ability to get those cards back if the Imp's not on the board. And the Imp's not going to be on the board because it's going to be in Wild. So, rip the zoo. The zoo always seems to come back. You know what I'm saying? Like, the zoo's not dead because it lost this. The zoo existed before the Imp, and only it exists after the Imp. It's just, the Imp was very, very powerful, plus a 1-mana, 1/3, and it's a demon. I mean, the stats are there, the ability's there, the mana cost is cheap. I mean, it's just a phenomenal card for zoo to lose. But it'll definitely get, probably replaced with something as good, or maybe even better. The Silverware Golem, I'm not going to really mention that. It was played a little bit at one time, but not really anymore at all. And then I believe there is I think that's actually everything. I think that's everything we wanted to cover. None of these other cards really strike mind. I have my list over here. And like I said, Karazhan was an adventure. The card pool itself was small. Talking about, the old gods previously, there's 140 cards in a set. And I think in adventure, there's a little less than 50. So with that, that's going to wrap up this video. Love to hear what you have to say, and if you agree with some of the things that I have mentioned on, expect the Mean Streets to be posted shortly after this video, and slightly longer due to the fact that we do have a ton more cards to go over with that, and pretty excited to take a look at everything that's going to be affected through Mean Streets, because I know that was a really big set for a lot of you guys, and it was a big set for the meta, so it's going to be interesting to take a deeper look at that. So with that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Of course, I'm Robert Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.